Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today we're going to talk about Catholic culture and the Latin Mass with my guest, Mr. Peter Suarez. Welcome.
Hi, Connor. It's really good to see you, and thanks so much for inviting me to have a conversation.
No problem. You're very welcome to be here, and it's just really great to talk to people who are familiar with the Latin Mass and not necessarily are priests. There's a lot of people, out there. Obviously, the most familiar people are priests, but, people with a long history with the Latin Mass from the laity is very important, I think, viewpoint that doesn't get touched upon very much these days. At least unless it's from like sort of the pundit type characters. I feel like those are the only ones that get a say or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm as laity as you can get, Connor.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a fine distinction, I would say. But yeah, so I think we should help my listeners and viewers get to know you a little bit. So will you tell us whether or not you're a cradle Catholic or not?
Word from our affiliate, Bishop Sheen Rosaries. You've probably worn through the chain of your cheap plastic rosary. Other rosaries simply can't stand up to the wear and tear of everyday life. Bishop Sheen Rosaries are made of solid metal beads and paracord to withstand any condition and are backed with a lifetime warranty. Upgrade your rosary to a Bishop Sheen Rosary made to fit your lifestyle or buy one for a friend. Each rosary sold supplies 2 weeks of food for a school kid in Uganda. You use the exclusive link down below to help support our efforts here at Plotlines. The link will take you to sheenrosaries.com. Be sure to use the code Plotlines10.
Yeah. I am a cradle Catholic. Come from a Catholic family on both sides, mom and dad's side. Both Catholic as far back as anybody knows. Dad's family from Spain and Australia, mom 100% Polish. So we've got some good JP2 roots there, as well as some Francisco Suarez, although no relation there to the great Jesuit philosopher and theologian.
Yeah,
I believe so. But we'll claim him anyway. So, cradle Catholic, and raising our kids that way as well.
What kind of style would you say you grew up in? Sort of what kind of Catholic?
Yeah, I think the common phrase is sort of cultural Catholic. We were Catholic by habit more than anything, by all indications, not deeply committed or deeply rooted in our faith, but went to Mass every Sunday, didn't miss holy days of obligation. Went to Catholic school up until 8th grade, all my brothers and sisters and I. So we're definitely involved culturally in the faith, but not I would say the kind of deep, meaningful relationship that we're called to have. That wasn't part of the upbringing. So, but we're all works in progress. We're all working on that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. So would you say that you sort of had more of an engagement when you were older, when you like after high school?
Yeah. After high school through college, didn't lose my faith, but still went to Mass even through college, but was by all accounts not a very good Catholic at that point in my life, and just sort of, should have gone to confession more and didn't, and was, again, still in the church, and thankful for that. But it really came, an actual reversion, if you like, came after my wife and I were married for a few years and actually had a couple of kids. So my wife was born and raised a Lutheran, and by all accounts, a really good Lutheran. We'd been serious about raising the kids Christian. Our oldest child, we tease her about it still. She was baptized in the Lutheran Church. And So she's our only, she's the black sheep as far as that goes. But we got to a point where I said to Corey, my wife, that if I'm supposed to be the spiritual head of the family, how can I do that if the family's not united? And she was like, okay, I'll look into it. And her conversion sort of paralleled my reversion, or my finally taking my faith seriously. And we sort of went on this really interesting journey together, and kind of went through those cycles of conversion and reversion where you get really fervent and you're kind of annoying to be around for a while because it's all you want to talk about, and you're willing, you want to hit people over the head with this amazing thing you're discovering. Sometimes even as a cradle Catholic, you're discovering for the first time, and it's pretty exciting. And it led to my wife's conversion. We were expecting our third child at the time when she was confirmed and brought into the church. And she's a better Catholic than I am now. So.
Yeah. Sometimes I only think of the annoying phase in the trad phase in the trad world.
Yeah. So that comes later.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I feel like it's very easy to associate that annoying phase with a lot of trads.
Yeah. I think we get a bum rap as far as that goes.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, you're right, Connor. It was kind of the same thing when we sort of made our way into, because we were very novus ordo Catholics at the time when we made this sort of conversion on my wife's part. It was very just mainline. We're going to mass, we were saying prayers at home, we were teaching our kids how to pray the rosary and that sort of thing. And we had not discovered traditional Catholicism by any stretch. So we had our first annoying phase as we sort of found out about what we had been missing overall in the church. And then we had, I think we avoided the annoying phase of traditional Catholicism altogether. And that's probably because we had very good, very well-rooted people around us as that transition happened.
Yeah. So when did you find the Latin Mass?
Yeah, that would have been with Benedict XVI's Motu Proprio, Summorum Pontificum in 2007. That was, my wife and I, she could tell the same story in much the same way. We had heard about this document being released, this thing that was going to unleash the Latin Mass. We had made very cursory inquiries via the internet into what is the Latin. We had no idea. We didn't know what it looked like, what it was. Had no idea. And then the evening after the Motu Proprio was released, EWTN television played a very old recording of a mass from Chicago. Our Lady of Sorrows Parish in Chicago was narrated by then Father Fulton Sheen, or it might have been Monsignor at the time. And we watched, it was about 2 hours, the entire video. It was an Easter Sunday Mass, Solemn High Mass. And we sat and watched with our jaws open, just totally taken aback. What is this? Why have we not seen this before? Where did it go? Why is it hard to find? Why is the Pope seeing fit to sort of unleash it, uncage it? And so that's where it began, was with that televised Mass. And we, within a Sunday or two, we were driving about an hour and 15 minutes to get to the Latin Mass. And just, we were still sort of had a foot in both worlds, in both masses. And it didn't take too very long for us to feel right at home with the old Mass. Yeah.
Okay. Did you really feel like Benedict XVI was really unleashing the Latin Mass? Because as someone also, grew up cradle Catholic, I had no idea that any of that was going on, even as I grew into like high school and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think unleashed it as far as we were concerned. I mean,
Okay.
we've, our personal experience was like this thing exploded into our lives and sort of consumed us. So it's not fair to say unleashed it on the church. The growth was there for in the years after Summorum Pontificum. There was certainly quite a bit of growth of the Old Mass, both from the priestly fraternity, the Institute, those Ecclesia Dei communities, as well as just parishes adding it to their Sunday schedule. So not necessarily unleashed on the church, but certainly unleashed in our world and hit us over the head for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it feels like it's a big victory when a Latin Mass is added to an average parish. I've never experienced that, but I imagine it's quite exciting.
Yeah, that was our experience, Connor, where a priest that we had been with for quite a while here locally, very Orthodox, just very reverend, great guy in general, and a good priest. And finally, it was probably a year after Summorum Pontificum, we were tired of driving an hour and 15 minutes with, by then, 4 small children, getting them up to make that drive on Sunday morning. We're like, well, we should try to have it here. So I actually approached Father William Gardner, and said, I'll learn to serve it if you want to say it. And it seemed like a reasonable thing. I didn't exactly know what I was getting myself into, but that's sort of how it started. He thought about it for a while, as he is wont to do. He's very careful decision maker and takes things to prayer, and does not make rash decisions, and wanted to be sure that this is something he should get involved in. And we were blessed that he did, and that sort of started that journey at the parish level, at our local parish. So, and not without its bumps and bruises along the way. It's met with an interesting amount of hostility at times. So it got added to the Sunday schedule after a while, and it was not always warmly received. But we had a good group. There at the parish that was thrilled to have it.
What is the average Novus Ordo look like at that parish versus, like, numbers wise versus the Latin Mass?
Well, we're not at that parish anymore. So it's a convoluted story that I don't know if it's be interesting to anybody but you and me, Connor. But we basically got asked to leave after a new pastor came in, and we were still having the Mass there for a while. Then we were basically asked to leave, and
exile.
Yes, in exile. Have Mass, will travel. We were graciously brought into a neighboring parish. Actually, it's a diocesan shrine. The church building that we're in is a diocesan shrine under the care of the local parishes, right next door to where we were, and that's worked out wonderfully. We provide some income to the shrine itself, which it lacked before, which everybody's happy about, and have a home. And beautiful parish church. So it's wonderful for us to be there. And so there's no other Sunday Masses at the shrine other than us.
Really?
It's not a parish church anymore. It's just a diocesan shrine. So they have weekday Masses there, funerals and weddings. And then as far as Sunday obligation Masses, we're the only one. There's 2 other parishes in town that have a full schedule. We've been there now for we've been at the shrine for 5 years, 6 time flies, Connor. I don't know, 6 years, maybe 7. I have no idea. We've been there a while, and God willing, we'll be there for a good while longer. So, but no, the in our area here in North Central Illinois, we generally the Novus Ordo is celebrated extremely reverently. It's not maybe some of the folks watching might be familiar with like the canon St. John's Cantius in Chicago. You know, we're not versus populum, or I'm sorry, we're not ad orientem here with the novus ordo. There's not much Latin, but it's done reverently, not any of the shenanigans that you might find in other places. But yeah, generally very good priests in our area. We're blessed to know a lot of them. A lot of them are very friendly towards the Latin Mass, and even say it themselves privately or come over and give us a hand if our priest isn't available.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you learned to serve it. What is it like serving the Latin Mass?
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking at first for someone who has no background in Latin whatsoever. So, you know, it's a little daunting, but again, the canon St. John Cantius, they have a website that's fantastic for training priests and servers to assist at the Old Mass. And that's where I just spent a lot of time, just kind of going line by line, learning the Latin. And then there's more for a server to do. There's more asked of an altar man. But there's more asked. Yeah, there's certainly more asked of you as a server at the Old Mass. The responses obviously are the biggest thing. You have to be just dialed in the whole time and ready to do your thing that way. You also have a bit more responsibilities physically to get things where they need to be. So there's definitely a learning curve there. Once we sort of settled in, and Father became more comfortable saying the Mass, because if the altar boy has a bit to learn, Father has a mountain to overcome in learning the Old Mass. I mean, there is a great deal for him to learn, to become familiar with, and then to just sort of soak in and be very comfortable with, so that the Mass is said seamlessly. So once that settled in, it just, I looked forward to it. And I had to do it for a while, Connor, because the group that we had, all the boys were too young, really, to start serving at that time. We were sort of like, I was anxiously awaiting them to get a bit older to start serving, to take that pressure off of me, mostly off of my knees. Kneeling on marble when you've had several sports injuries to your knees is no fun. So that was, well, it's a couple years off of purgatory, maybe we'll take it. So yeah, but it's a great privilege. It's just an absolute privilege. It's the same privilege to serve at the new Mass, to be that close to the altar, to be assisting the priest with the sacrifice of the Mass is a humbling privilege, and I miss it a little bit, being that close and that intimately connected to what's going on at the altar. But it's so fun to see now our everybody's kids getting into it. From, we've got some kids that have actually graduated and gone away that can't come back to serve anymore. Some kids that are high school aged and then, junior high and younger, that are getting involved and learning how to serve. And they might not appreciate it yet, but eventually they'll be glad they did it. And it's really a wonderful, wonderful experience.
What's like the sort of, I guess, the in the moment feeling, yeah.
Well, early on, you're in the moment, thinking about what you're doing and saying, and then thinking ahead to what's coming next and hoping you don't screw it up, because there's a lot going on, especially early in the Mass. The prayers at the foot of the altar, getting through the Confiteor, those things take a good deal of concentration at first. Once it becomes more ingrained and it's just sort of second nature, you can really pray the Mass the way you would in the pew, to some extent, with the added, I'll say, privilege of being a intimate part of what's going on with Father at the altar. So after you get that comfortable, reach that comfortable level of serving, It's a 45-minute, hour, however long mass is, prayer, and it goes by in 2 minutes. It's you do get, and this might be more an older guy who's more dialed into it. It might be unique to me or to older folks who get to serve the mass. When you're young, you're probably thinking about 1,000 other things that you might otherwise be doing. But yeah, as an older guy doing it, it was great. And I left the 5 kids by then in the pew with my wife, and I didn't have to deal with any of that because I had to serve every Sunday for a while. So I got out of that too, which was hard.
I was gonna say it seems to me a bit of a sacrifice for older servers, stepping outside of the pew, pews and into serving. Lost you. Yeah. Okay.
Connor, I dropped you, I think.
Yeah. So if you could just start with sort of what is the fact that it is a sacrifice for older servers to leave their families in the pews.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a sacrifice for mom back there dealing with everybody all by themselves. Certainly, you want to be there, and part of the goal, certainly, with training the younger guys to take over, was to get back in the pew and be able to give those mean looks to the 5-year-old who might be trying to, do acrobatics off the back of the pew. So, no, it was definitely. It's wanted to be both places. You're torn, right? You want to experience the mass and pray the mass with your family in the pew. On the other hand, you get to do this really cool thing and assist with the assist Father at the altar. So yeah, it was. I heard about it once in a while, like when is Gabe, or when is Luke, or when is this guy going to be ready to serve so that you can be back in the pew? So yeah, for sure.
Well, it's interesting. Does it make quieter children? That's the real question. Force quieter children.
Yeah, it's not necessarily.
No.
I think it does induce a little bit of attentiveness in the kids. I mean, we saw that with our kids. When we started going to the Latin Mass on Sundays, our oldest would have been 7 or 8, somewhere in there. And we had 4 at the time. The youngest would have been 1 turning 2, somewhere in there. And we did notice a more attentiveness. It could have been the novelty of the thing at first, but the mass that we went to generally was a missa cantata, or a sung mass. And there is a good deal of very beautiful music going on nearly all the time, which tickles the ears of the little ones and keeps them a little bit more dialed in. And so, yeah, I think it did. And we did have our oldest son started to play mass at home only after we started going to the Latin Mass. So that was interesting to see. That did not occur until maybe a month or so into attending the Latin Mass, where he was getting dishes and bowls out and going to the piano bench and setting up an altar. And yeah, it was kind of fun.
Is there a greater sense of awe, do you think, that just gives kids that interest, or more stuff to do almost too?
Yeah, there's I think just as much to look at, and that way, but the music at a sung mass is certainly helpful for little kids. It's certainly beautiful for adults as well. I don't know. I'm not sure about that, Connor. That's a good question. I think the overall, the quiet, you know how if your kid's misbehaving, you have a tendency to want to raise your voice at them to get their attention. But sometimes if you whisper or are just quiet and look at them, that grabs their attention even more. And I think that the low mass, the quiet mass, does that to us, where it's up to you to engage in what's going on to a large degree. The mass is occurring at the altar. Father's doing his work. The servers are assisting him. And it's gets your attention in that it's quiet and it's asking you to participate. It's asking you to put in the effort of looking and seeing what's going on and discovering what's unfolding at the altar. So I think as kids get a little older, I think that might be part of it. Instead of just always there's always someone saying something. There's always, I don't want to say noise. There's always something being said out loud. This quietness of the Mass is certainly induces a different kind of participation.
Yeah, no, I feel that a lot with the Novus Ordo. I feel that its repetitiveness, its responses just make it meaningless. Lord, making the responses meaningless. I don't feel very I don't think about what I say at a Novus Ordo when I respond, and it actually makes me want to not respond so I can just, sit back and kind of enjoy it instead of responding. Or at least that's what I feel like going from a Latin Mass to a Novus Ordo. I feel like not responding.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is that other kind of participation. Both masses, I think, have a tendency, because you're as a server, even the priest, you are saying the propers of the Mass are the same from Mass to Mass, and you can certainly say the words just from rote memorization and plop them out there and not really know what you're saying or be engaged with what you're saying. That's certainly possible at the Old Mass, as well as when you make your responses at a Novus Ordo Mass. The danger is there. The danger is there for both Masses. I think one of the things I think is what you're alluding to is just the quietness of the Mass sort of allows you to internalize what's going on more. That term active participation doesn't have to mean responding verbally, audibly to a prayer. It can mean an internalization and responding actively to what's going on in your mind, in your heart, and nobody knows you're participating but you, and that's okay.
Yeah. Did you see sort of the change gradually, or more of an increase with the Latin Mass, the interest in the Latin Mass grow in Benedict's pontificate? Because it's funny to me, I only learned that the Latin Mass existed during Francis's pontificate, which I find kind of ironic.
It was slow growth for sure. At least our experience here in Peru, Illinois, was very slow growth. We had a solid core of families. We had a couple of families come from outside of our parish territory that found out that we had the Mass here and wanted it, and they had easier access to it now. But once we reached that sort of initial core group of individuals, couples, and families, it really leveled off. And it leveled off for several years. And then our situation changed, where we left that parish, and Father and our group went to a neighboring parish, or the shrine, Holy Rosary Shrine in LaSalle, Illinois. And it was a little bit slow growth for a while there as well. And actually, what sort of bumped us up was the COVID situation. We started to see a lot of growth there, mostly, I think, because we retained a very high level of normalcy at Mass. Novus Ordo communities could have done the same thing, and I'm sure some have, but we maintained a very high level of normalcy through the whole COVID crisis. And I think some people were just drawn to that, like, these people are just acting normal and going to Mass. What's that about? And they came and checked it out. And other folks just, they didn't have access to their Mass. And so they made a drive and came up to where we were. So we definitely saw some growth through that. We've maintained it here the last few years, and have actually had these families register at the parish locally so that they could, they're a part of our parish family now. And it's been wonderful. We joke kind of the old timers, and I don't mean to make myself old, but those of us that have been there the whole time have been waiting for this sort of, like, because you have something you like, you love, you think it's great, and you're like, why doesn't everybody else like it and love it and think it's great? And people should be banging the doors down to get in, and they're not. What's wrong? And it just took time, and God let the sort of the growth happen in His own time, and it's been fun.
Yeah, I've experienced something similar. I really started to go to the Latin Mass and Sunday Masses right before COVID hit, and then COVID hit, and then that was just pretty much everything for Sundays. But like, we have I go to an FSSP. Well, the priest is an FSSP priest, but he goes to a parish from a different parish to say this Latin Mass, and it's quite interesting because, as you say, the things are relatively normal. I mean, other than following some minor irritating guidelines from the bishop, and you if they were mildly irritating because you'd hear it from the priest. But just that there was, I heard stories where priests yelled at, or not yelled, but stopped Mass to tell somebody to put their mask on. And that's not happening in Latin Mass. Latin Masses, no matter probably where you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this normalcy, and sort of apparently they had better numbers after COVID than they did before COVID. So, yeah, which is a big bonus with the bishop at the moment during these troubled times.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's and I think once you're not going to stay somewhere just because you don't have to wear a mask, or because you don't have to sanitize your hands every 5 minutes or whatever it is. You're not going to stay there if the thing that you're going to doesn't grab you and hold you there. And I think what we've seen anyway here is that some people came because they were actively seeking out the Latin Mass. Others came because it was Mass. And even those folks, right. Even those folks have said personally to us in conversation that they can't ever see going back to the Novus Ordo. And, that's, individuals have unique experiences that way, but it's certainly something that if you give it, even if you're not looking for it, if you give it a chance, if you go to it a few times, if you sort of marinate in the, as you said, awe, the sort of just the awe that is induced by the silence of even a low Mass, it's remarkable, and it grabs onto you, and you find yourself praying deeply, having an intimate connection with the Mass and with your Savior that you might not have had prior to that. You might not have been allowed to have it because Mass lacked silence. Even you might have experienced this, Connor, at Novus Ordo Masses. You go up, receive communion, and before you even get back to the pew, there's a recessional hymn in full swing, and it's like, I just need like 2 minutes, please. I want to commune with my God for 2 minutes in silence, and the old Mass provides that for you. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, that's true. It's very distracting. Though I think at one point when I was a kid, I actually enjoyed the song aspect of the Novus Ordo, which kind of baffles me as an adult, but that's how it was. But since we're talking about different liturgies, have you ever been to like an Eastern Catholic liturgy?
I have not. The closest I've ever come to that, Connor, is when Benedict XVI visited, and I don't remember even where. If he was in Russia, did he visit the Russian Patriarch at one point? And they had a liturgy. It was something during Benedict's. You can see it moved me greatly because I have no memory of it outside of like seeing it on EWTN television. Yeah, I think it happened. But no, a few snippets like that on television, but I've never attended.
Yeah, the closest thing I've gotten to one was just confession at I think it was a Russian Catholic, or no, Ukrainian Catholic. They'd probably get very mad if I
yes, careful
getting messing up that Ukrainian Catholic Church confession. It was the only place at this time that I knew of where you could receive communion in the Chicago suburbs, because all the masses were still closed at this time. I think it was in the beginning of July, but so they were doing confessions, but they weren't doing mass yet. So, and I had heard this, and I wanted, but like the thing that the Ukrainians were doing that made me say, oh, okay, I want to go there, was they were also distributing communion. After you could receive communion after you went to confession.
Yeah. Okay.
Which was kind of interesting. And it's Eastern, so it was what is it called when they're in both forms at once? Intinction, I think.
Intinction, yeah.
Yeah. So it was really interesting receiving intinction. And I tried to look up the Ukrainian Catholic like confession, like what you do, which the priest kind of just went like sort of let me try. Didn't really give me any guidance with it. But I tried it. I don't know how much I got right. I don't know how much I got wrong. But because he was like, we get plenty of Latin Catholics in here, and so he'll just do it normally, like Latin. So I don't really know what I did, if it was right or wrong or what, but it was interesting. In that rite, you kiss the priest's stole when you confess.
Okay.
There's also a Bible too. Sometimes I think normal circumstances that you also kiss. So there's a lot of interesting things that I've never heard or never known was a thing. But it fascinated me, as well as I informed that priest that Latins are still supposed to abstain from meat on Fridays. He didn't know that.
Most Latins don't know that, Connor.
Well, yeah, but he was like, no Latin priest has ever told me that. I'm like, okay. It's in canon law.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So, but I just think it's interesting I'd like to go to a Eastern Catholic church sometime to actually see the liturgy, but I'm almost afraid to go to the wrong one, to one that doesn't do it. Like, I don't know if there's like a traditional way of doing it or not doing it, and I feel like I wouldn't want to get spoiled by going to one that isn't, whatever the best way or the most, I don't know, accurate or so.
Yeah, I think
form.
most of those liturgies, most of those divine liturgies, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think most of those divine liturgies stayed intact, have pretty much stayed intact, whether it's the Orthodox churches or the Eastern Catholic churches. I don't think much has gone on, but you're right to be cautious to make sure.
Yeah. Have you ever been interested in going to an Eastern Catholic divine liturgy?
Yeah, not really, Connor, to be honest. After finding the Latin Mass, we and being able to have it here just on our doorstep for over a decade now, haven't felt an urge to seek out anything else. The time might come where an Eastern Catholic divine liturgy looks pretty good, but yeah, we'll wait and see. Wait and see on that. So. No, I think it's, I've always been, as any Latin Catholic should, just pleased to know that the diversity is still respected, that there's many Eastern rites that are in union with Rome. It enriches, I think John Paul II said the lung breathes out of two lungs, East and West. And knowing that richness still exists is great. So yeah, there might come a time sooner than later, but we'll see.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. I mean, I just have hopefully it's a passing interest and not something that needs to be pushed into a more common place. But it's just funny because we're talking about diversity when we can get into the latest motu proprio. Unity is what they say is what this motu proprio Traditionis Custodes is supposedly about. And so what do you think, sort of, we're talking about diversity, what kind of unity are they talking about?
I have no idea. There's my short answer. I don't know. We're in the infant stage of the unpacking of this, I think. Supich has let his self be heard on the topic. Seems to be expected that many prelates in the United States will follow suit. That remains to be seen. So how denying the sacraments to faithful Catholics creates unity escapes me. I'm willing to listen to have that explained to me. But it certainly, to my simple brain, it doesn't compute very easily. So we'll see. And because there is a richness and a diversity in the Catholic Church in terms of rites. So we can get into the antiquity of the old rite versus the newness of the new Mass. There's much to be said there. The variety that can occur, and that is sort of built into the new Mass. There's a great deal of variety and diversity, as you probably have seen with your own eyes, on how a novus ordo can play out from an ad orientem, mostly in Latin with chant, down to the opposite end of that spectrum.
Dance.
So I'm not sure. I have my theories. They're only theories, and I'm not sure how it's going to unfold. I can say that our bishop here, Daniel Janke, has been over the years very, if not supportive, very tolerant of our meager efforts to make the Latin Mass more widely known and available. We've always received permission for special masses, for confirmations in under the old rites, in the old form, baptisms, etc. So we've been very blessed with Bishop Janke here, to sort of let us do our thing and let us do that thing which we feel most at home in, and we feel called to live out our Catholicism in this way. And he's been very respectful and supportive of that. So we hope that continues, and time will tell if it will.
I do feel like there's a new sort of feeling growing amongst people, is that that they'd rather have an indifferent bishop.
Yes.
At this point.
Yes, that's true, and I don't mean to say that Bishop Janke has been indifferent, but he's not. There's a few bishops around the country that say the Old Mass, that are more actively involved in its growth and its health within their diocese. Bishop Janke has not been one of those. He doesn't say the Old Mass, but I think he recognizes that there's an expression of Catholicism here that is to be respected. It's older than anything else we have, and so if there's a small group, and we are by all standards still a fairly small group, if there's a small group of Catholics that feel drawn to this and feel enriched and fed by it, to use a modern term, then let them do their thing. So it's indifference can be wonderful though.
Yeah. It's a weird desire, but the interesting thing is the sort of the unity statement is something that Supage used a couple years back when I believe he was in Missouri. He locked the doors of a Latin Mass church during the Triduum, and said that the reason he did that was to promote unity.
Yes, it's always unifying to hammer down on a minority inside of your, that's under your patronage, under your control. That's very unifying. Connor, it doesn't make sense to me. It's probably too early to say that that's just lip service and hiding some other goal. I think that's a possibility though, and the next few months will be interesting to see how the other bishops in the United States react to that. But no, unity doesn't seem to be promoted through those kinds of actions. That's for certain. Conformity. I mean, if you're mistaking like coerced conformity to some norm as unity, if we're redefining terms that way, then possibly. But we'll see.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Now we just need to start. Somebody needs to start doing the Ambrosian rite and see if that gets people upset.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's there's Carmelites use the Carmelite rite. Which is the Latin Mass with a couple little tweaks. I understand. I've seen parts of their liturgy, and it's basically the Latin Mass with a couple little variations. Does that need to be removed from traditional Carmelite monasteries? I mean, this is I think is part of the problem, and part of hopefully we'll get answers to these questions as time goes on, because there's the question of the Ecclesia Dei communities, the priestly fraternity of St. Peter, the Institute of Christ the King. That question, I don't think, has been answered fully to anyone's real satisfaction. They've said it applies to them, but saying it applies to them and then trying to figure out how to reconcile that with the founding documents and constitutions of these groups of priests,
Yeah,
is two very different things. And there's a complexity there that is going to take a while to deal with. I don't know how you ask a community that exists for the old liturgical books, that's absolutely foundational to who they are, and then you ask them to step away from that once a month and on the biggest feast days of the calendar. I'm not sure how you can ask that of those communities. So,
well, that's my understanding. That's only with supage, right? Not with the church worldwide at the moment.
Yeah, I have heard that the priestly fraternity of St. Peter, when they issued a statement early on that said this does not apply to us, we're going to carry on with business as usual, that was answered from Rome. Cardinal Roche, if I'm saying that correctly, I believe he's the one that issued that's like, no, it applies to you. Figure it out.
I think that they responded again to that, if I'm not mistaken, with we can't do that. Thank you.
Yes. Good. That's I think a lot of us are going to be saying, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do that before too very long.
Well, like, I mean, if you think about it, people have been saying that to the Vatican II documents regarding the liturgy anyways. That's the response of most Novus Ordo masses to Sacrosanctum Concilium. I mean, it says Latin, Gregorian chant, and and it says nothing about, there's nothing about versus populum in the introduction of the new mass or in Vatican II. So it comes to, I can't remember there was a canon lawyer who basically said that a law doesn't really come to effect if the people who it is about don't recognize it and answer to it.
Yeah, I understand a basic principle of canon law is that the people involved in the law that you've written can't be harmed. If the faithful are harmed, it's not a good law. You don't have to follow it. It seems to be a pretty easy case to make that people are harmed through the restrictions to the sacraments in this way. So we'll see. There's a lot of people a lot smarter than me who have a lot to say about this and are saying it. And so I think, like I said, we're in the first few minutes of a debate that's going to go on for a while, and we'll see at the end of it what happens.
I think there's a lot of like young Catholics who did not expect joining starting to go to a Latin Mass, and there's a lot of young Catholics that are doing this. I don't think any of them expected this argument or this debate, because I mean it seems kind of out of left field, but not out of left field, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's especially considering the olive branch that was extended to the SSPX a couple of years ago, where they were given faculties to hear confessions, to witness marriages. That raised issues with, well, if they can administer those sacraments, why can't they administer other sacraments? It muddied the waters, as has been sort of the theme of the past several years. The statement is issued, some direction is given, and it raises 1,000 more questions than it answers. But especially considering that, it makes this all the more hard to understand. And as you said, in some ways, though not entirely hard to understand, there's been hints and statements made over the past several years that have made it fairly clear that folks in Rome are not altogether thrilled with the traditional Mass and traditional Catholics.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I feel like so much of what this world works through these days, maybe it just always has, and it's never been made clear or made so obvious, that everything is sort of worked through hints before something happens.
Yeah, I think is that you put the trial balloons out, right? You send a feeler out to see how it's going to be received before you actually make a statement. So that's politics, right? I mean, that's how politics work. And the issuance of these restrictions in the Diocese of Rome was seen as sort of that trial balloon for this latest crackdown, if you will. So I don't know how well they were received or not received in Rome, but that was sort of the test case. And it's, I think, to a great extent, the Supich situation is a test case here in the States to see how it's received, to see if it's ignored. I mean, the document was largely ignored when it was released over the summer.
True.
And it was not going to be, it looked like it wasn't really going to be enforced. There was nothing, it wasn't clear enough to be enforceable. So as they clean it up and clear it up, we'll see.
Well, you can't really clear it up. The whole thing, it just doesn't make any sense from like any legal perspective. You can't have, like, I don't understand how you write a letter telling people how to understand a document. How does that letter become anything except for a suggestion? Because the law is the law, and then every bishop has the opportunity basically to dispense of any law anyways. Not any law, but I think there are certain rules that allow you to dispense laws on the faithful. So it's so weird, because the whole message of Traditionis Custodes was, this is the bishop's jobs. He basically says, get rid of this or minimize this or regulate it to make it smaller, but also doesn't say you have to do anything except for, he says put them all under certain leadership, which some bishops have done, some bishops don't care to do that. The whole thing about, like, it's not allowed in parishes, it doesn't really make any sense. It's like saying they're not allowed in churches. It's like back in the day, there probably was a lot more non-parish churches, and maybe even in Europe, I don't know, maybe it's a European thing that there would be a lot of non-parish churches and just churches of other sorts, chapels and such.
Yeah, I've heard that explanation given, that was kind of unique to the situation even in Italy, that the parish church mentioned in the document. Because if you did that here in the States, if you eliminated the old Mass at all parish churches where it existed, you would cut the number of masses down to, you'd cut 90% of the masses out. There's just, there's a few handfuls of fraternity and institute parishes, and even some of those, like the one that you attend. Is that Father Maggieri, by the way? Yeah. Even that one is at a parish church. He comes from an FSSP parish to a parish church to say that Mass. So that one's eliminated. You're right. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem to foster unity at all. So yeah, I continue to be baffled.
Oh, and we did talk about the Carmelite rite, but the Dominican rite, I've talked to some Dominicans over the past couple months, and who do celebrate the Dominican rite, and they are basically saying that the Traditionis Custodes is also directed towards them, which I don't understand how you can read the document and get that, because they're not the same right. That's the whole point of it, is that they're is that even by law, they're not the same right.
Mm-hmm.
They exist from different times. They're very similar, but that doesn't make them the same. So it's just kind of weird to me that they're acting like it's the same and needing to ask for the same permission from their bishop when they're not even regulated by it, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. As I said, it certainly, it leaves so much unanswered. It's imprecise. It's vague. It doesn't have anything that's seems easily enforceable without lots and lots of clarification going forward. So we'll see. I mean, there's been any number of things like that in my work, my regular job. There's been lots of.
I mean, this isn't your regular job?
It should be, Connor. It should be. It's not.
No.
You don't pay well enough.
True, I don't pay well enough to myself.
That's right. But no, there's been lots of things that have come out that, you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to do this job. And everyone gets in a bit of a kerfuffle about it for a short time. 6 months later, nobody remembers that it was even a thing. It just goes away. Could this be that? It could be. It could be. I mean, I hope it is. I hope it's something that just gets ignored to the point where it doesn't exist, 6 months, 12 months from now. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately, but we can pray. We can pray for that holy indifference that you spoke of earlier.
Yeah, from the bishops.
That's right.
But interesting. I've heard of a lot of other legal problems with laws. Like, have you ever heard that laws must be written and promulgated in Latin for them to be for them to hold weight?
A form of that, it has to be recorded in. Where does it have to be recorded, Connor, for it to have the weight of law? There's an official publication of the Vatican that it's like at our house, if my wife doesn't write it on the calendar, it doesn't happen. It's not real until it's written on the calendar.
Vatican News?
It's something like that. And one of your astute listeners, watchers will tell us what it is someday. But anyway, it's not there yet. It hasn't reached the level of law yet, as far as I know.
Because I've heard that it must be written in Latin.
It very well could. That's above my pay grade, Connor.
And that it wasn't. But because everyone has to theoretically go off of the Latin, like what it means in Latin, to understand what it means in law. And all I can find from the Vatican is an official translation, which I don't really know what that means. So, but it's just kind of curious, because it would make sense, be weird for an institution, because, it's not, we don't live just in an institution that is itself just like a church in of itself. It is also the Vatican is a country. The Vatican is a state. States have rules, states have customs, way of promulgating law and stuff like that. So it would make sense for the Vatican to publish all their laws in their vernacular, which is Latin. Their vernacular is Latin. They can't get around that. So that, in that case, if they haven't published in Latin, it has no weight whatsoever. If that's the case, that Latin is a mandatory way of publishing law. And then on another sort is sort of the papal bull, quo primum. My understanding is papal bulls are higher than motu proprios, so it's sort of weird to me that we could be doing this dance around the Latin Mass when when the Pope can't do anything about, or theoretically at this point, or hasn't even tried to get around the papal bull that promulgated the original Latin Mass, or not the original, the codified 1500s Latin Mass, which, interesting enough, isn't mentioned. I don't know if it's even mentioned in the if it's Paul the Fifth, or sorry, Pius the Fifth, that's even mentioned in the motu proprio. Do you think it makes sense for us to suddenly just be like, oh, we're going back to the Pius the Fifth, ordo, that was promulgated, and that's a loophole? I don't think that would actually happen, but I think it's a funny idea that the thing that can't be undone, go back to that, then it's your refuge.
Right. Well, the language in that document codifying the Latin Mass, the language there is clear, precise, a little scary,
a little damning.
Yes. And so it seems, again, I don't know the inner workings of papal documents, how you can undo previously issued laws, if that's possible or not. But to replace the old Mass with the new is one thing. To say that the old Mass is abrogated, no longer has no standing, however you want to phrase it, is something else altogether. And if that's the stated goal of the current motu proprio, that seems difficult to justify.
But even just the fact that it's being the current motu proprio is trying to affect the Mass that is expressly protected in the papal bull, it seems kind of bonkers in of itself. Is like, previously, this is the first ever document that has ever tried to suppress, from my understanding, instead of like there were the papal indults back in the day, but that those were not after there was an express repression of the old Mass. It was more of a passive repression that just kind of happened.
Right.
So it's just it's bonkers, or very odd to me.
Yeah, I think bonkers is the appropriate term. If we can translate bonkers into Latin somehow, that would be like a very precise term for the current situation, because it just, from any angle, at least from a layman's perspective, it does not make sense. None of the stated purposes for doing it seem to be clear or given in good conscience. They don't seem to be, in other words, they don't seem to be the real reason that the motu proprio was issued. We can speculate about what the reasons might be, but unity doesn't seem to fit. It doesn't seem to fit in this case. So
no, we love unity.
We love unity, so we're going to repress you. Yes,
that would be my framing.
And people have tried to attain unity in that way throughout history, but we've never thought very well of them.
No. And I don't know if I'm ready to reference people who have done that.
Neither am I.
Which is scary in itself.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, when that happens in this world we live in, the world, basically the Catholic world, in of itself is so marginal these days that who cares? That's what most people think. That's what most Catholics think, because most Catholics, I don't even think, know any of this is happening.
No.
They're absolutely oblivious because they don't go to church.
Right.
They don't have
I
to
would
go
say
to
most,
church.
yeah, I would say most mass-going Catholics are unaware still of these current restrictions, of the initial release of the motu proprio, and then Cardinal Suplich's restrictions for the Archdiocese of Chicago, I think, have escaped most church-going Catholics. It doesn't affect them. It's probably, at least in our diocesan paper, I don't think it's gotten any real coverage yet here locally. So, it's very much under the radar screen. It affects a very small percentage of Catholics. Traditional Latin Mass going Catholics are a growing number over the years, but still a minority within the church. And so, yeah, it's not widely known at all.
Have you heard that, like, sort of the phrase that, like, so 1% of, I think it's 1% of traditional Catholics, who they are 1% of Catholics entirely, deny the validity of the Novus Ordo, and then but 70% of Novus Ordo going Catholics deny the validity of the Novus Ordo. So are you more worried about the 70% of Novus Ordo goers that deny the Novus Ordo, or are you more worried about the 1% of the 1% who deny the validity of the Novus Ordo? It's a funny focus where, in a sense, there's such a minimal problem.
Right. That has been the straw man set up and knocked down through all of this, is that we have to make sure that these traditional Catholics, they accept wholeheartedly the documents of the Second Vatican Council, that they are, make sure that they are not sedevacantists, make sure that they accept the validity of the new Mass. I've been running in these circles for 15 years now, and have been to the Latin Mass in Indiana, Nebraska, a few places in Illinois, talked to a lot of people. Generally, Latin Mass Catholics like to hang out after Mass and talk to each other for a long time. So we've done that all over the place. Mm-hmm. I have never spoken, and this is, I know, anecdotal. I've never spoken to anyone, no matter how critical they might be of parts of the Second Vatican Council or elements that have been removed from the new Mass. They never deny the validity. They are among the most faithful, fervent Catholics you're going to find. They pray for the Holy Father. They pray for their bishops. They believe everything the Church teaches wholeheartedly, with very few exceptions. If you're having a problem in the Church, traditional Catholics seem like they would be part of the solution and not a problem to be solved. And that is what has perplexed and saddened a lot of traditional Catholics over this, is that, our Mass is different than yours. It looks different. It's much older than yours. But we're Catholics. We don't, you've seen the Pew research, right, of belief in the real presence, belief in the life issues, adherence to the not using contraception, etc. These numbers from mass-going Novus Ordo Catholics to traditional Catholics the differences are vast in their adherence, to Catholic values, Catholic rules, belief in Catholic doctrine, etc. So it seems like we would be part of a solution if you're having a problem with something and not a problem to be solved. So it is perplexing, bonkers, all of those things. And we remain cautiously optimistic here locally for a good outcome, but we'll wait and see wait and see what happens.
Yeah, wait and see. I think that's a good place to stop. So thank you for coming on. Thanks for talking with me, and I hope our audience enjoyed our conversation. And I
Thank
think
you,
there's
Connor.
plenty more to talk about in the future. Yep. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful night or day whenever you're watching this. So thank you. Bye, everyone.